Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Today, we're going to talk about the movie Cheyenne Social Club, which you'll see an image of over here. Yes, this is a VHS tape. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get some of these older movies in Blu-ray or DVD or whatever? I had to find this one. So, Cheyenne Social Club, say that 10 times fast, is an old 1970s Western comedy starring Jimmy Stewart, Henry Fonda, I keep wanting to say Henry Ford, Henry Fonda, and Shirley Jones. Today's gonna be a bit different. I'm gonna be a bit more spoilery because this is an older film and no one even gonna watch it anyway. And I also do some commentary at the end about some things I think about. So, movie takes place post-Civil War, I think, Old West, Texas. Starts off there anyway. Jimmy Stewart plays James O'Halloran. Henry Fonda plays Harvey Sullivan, his best friend. They get notice that John's brother, DJ, has passed away and left him his business, the Cheyenne Social Club. I screw that up every time. So they travel to Texas. They travel from Texas to the Wyoming. It's still a territory at the time. So it didn't look the year up. I don't care. It's still a territory at the time. They get there. They go meet the lawyer who has the will. Gives John like the money that the business has earned, his percentage of the profits the business has earned since his brother's death. He buys a nice suit. Goes with his friend. Where they meet Jenny, sitting on the front porch in a green dress and a shawl. And they discover that this is not a saloon as they had originally thought. His brother DJ had been a con man. He didn't trust him his whole life. Didn't think he would ever amount to anything. To discover they had a business was a surprise. They find out this is a brothel, a high-end, expensive brothel. And these 6 women are his inventory. To give some character background, John O'Halloran is a very, very traditional, kind of almost prudish guy. His friend Harvey is kind of simple, not very bright, a bit more laid back. His brother was a con man. He didn't like or trust his brother at all. So to discover that his brother had made a successful business was a surprise. But to have, some straight-laced character, inherit a house of ill repute, as it were, is a shock to both of them. John is very hesitant about this. He's not entirely on board. He actually initially plans on closing it down, just shutting it down. Harvey, on the other hand, is quite pleased that his best friend owns a brothel. He is quite enthusiastic about staying there and getting to know these ladies. The townsfolk are funny. When he first arrives, he asks, the men are all happy to see him. He asks this towns lady, ma'am, can you please direct me to the Cheyenne Social Club? She's like, how dare you? So like all the men in town love him. All the women in town hate him. Until he announces he's going to close it down. Then all the men hate him and all the women like him. There's some, other stuff that goes on. He starts to get used to having a regular, decent income. He's not going to be a millionaire by any means, but I mean, if rough estimate, it'd be the equivalent of someone being handed a business that just makes you a couple $100,000 a year for you having to do anything but show up. Because that's pretty much, this business kind of runs itself. He makes, however many thousands of dollars a year as it would be in 1880s money. But that's a rough equivalent. He kind of gets used to having money. The money kind of comes between John and Harvey. There's some shenanigans there's a running gag in this film because like all the ladies when they first get a chance to speak alone to John make a point of saying that they were DJ's favorite. So like his brother was, you know, enjoying his inventory personally, and the openings, the scene where John and Harvey first get there and they figure out what this business is, and he is introduced to all these ladies for the first time. It really makes me chuckle even now just thinking about it. It's just such a goofy, cute little scene. Sorry, I kicked the thing where the camera is set up. Sorry, it shook back and forth because we're high quality productions here. There's some other stuff that goes on. He eventually decides to keep the business. Money comes between him and Harvey. There is an incident where Jenny is beaten by someone. John goes to the local saloon to confront him for it. They get into a gunfight, and the only reason John wins is because Harvey makes a noise to distract the other guy, and he shoots and kills him. And then this guy's family comes to take revenge for them for killing their brother, whatever, cousin. So there's that kind of stuff going on. There's a big gunfight shooter at the end. John at the end decides to give the business to the girls. He can't do this. It's not working for him. Goes back to Texas. The film ends kind of bittersweetly because he's back in Texas being a cowhand like he was doing when the movie started with Harvey, his friend. And they get a very sweet note from Jenny to like update him on what's going on with the business and the girls and stuff. And it's just a light comedy that just makes me chuckle. It really does. It's not great. I don't think it won any awards or anything, but I've always liked it because it's partly because of the subject matter. I mean, and also, I mean, Jimmy Stewart is basically portraying himself. He's known for playing, very, very prim and proper characters. Shirley Jones is known, so the fact that he inherits a bordello, and Shirley Jones is known for playing very motherly characters or wholesome characters, that she is the madam of this business. Also is a kind of a bit of a switch for me as a kid, seeing her as the mother in the TV sitcom The Partridge Family, now seeing her, in a bustier. Was it a bustier? Whatever. Basically seeing her in 18th century underwear. So it's also being a teenager, being a preteen when I saw it, it's like, this subject matter was kind of titillating for me. It's a fun, cute movie. I'm not sure how well it aged. There's some misogyny, I guess you could say. But still, I give it, it's definitely, for me, it's like an A-. I'm not sure how well it would carry over to someone for a new film if they'd never seen it before. But it's cute. It's funny. One of the things that makes it work so well is that because the era in which it was written, 1970, you couldn't talk about, nothing is spoken of explicitly. They never say what the business is. They never say what the girls do for a living. So, I mean, it's always half-finished sentences, or fade to black, or door closes. Nothing is ever explicit. So the fact that they kind of like tiptoe around the subject is kind of, for me, what makes it so funny and so cute and so fun to watch. So there's that. I would recommend it. I really do. The pacing's a bit off in places because, the dialogue is a bit stilted, kind of. Not stilted, I guess, but the dialogue is a bit old-fashioned. Anyone who watches older movies knows what I'm talking about. They don't write dialogue as realistically as they would today, but still, there's still some good stuff. There's some fun banter between Jimmy Stewart and Henry Fonda's character. Some good banter between Jimmy Stewart and Shirley Jones's character. John and Jenny, John and Harvey. There's some good verbal dialogue, some good banter that goes back and forth, and it's really fun to watch and listen to. Um, there are two things I'd like to discuss about this film. The first one was something that occurred to me when mentally plotting out what I was going to say. Um, and it's not related to the title that I'm going to write out. Um, these women are high-end prostitutes, but they're always treated well. They're not. I mean, there are people in the film who don't treat them well, who look down upon them for what they're doing. But the film doesn't. The script doesn't. These women are doing a job they want to do. They enjoy doing the job they want to do. They weren't forced into it for circumstances, for poverty. These women like their job. They're excited about their job. They love their job. um, they're eager to do their job. They feel they're doing a vital service for their community. I think they are too. But this film treats them very positively, which you see that very rarely even today. That type of sex positivity, that type of comfort. I mean, Jimmy Stewart's uncomfortable, but the film treats these women exceptionally well. These women are confident, and they have their own agency. This film just treats these women better than most films I've seen. Yeah, there's sexism. It was the 1970s, but the fact that the film in the 1970s did this and treated this subject with respect and these women with respect is astonishing to me. It was not something I noticed as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old. It wasn't something I thought about until I was, again, head plotting, because I don't write any scripts, head plotting out what I was going to say. I didn't even think about that. It was like going for a walk, thinking about what I was going to do when I came on camera. But yeah, these women are awesome. I would love to meet some of these women. I mean, and not in a professional sense, but they seem like interesting, intelligent, confident young women. And anyone should be happy to meet them under any circumstances. And it's not often portrayed that way in anything that I watch or see or read. And a lot of people intellectually, say, oh, of course these, women deserve respect, but they don't actually do it. This film does, surprisingly. Treats them so well. So just for that, bravo to Gene Kelly. Oh yeah, Gene Kelly of Singing in the Rain and Anchors Away directed and produced this film. Yeah, so another fun fact from, that a famous guy from the 50s would do this kind of film too, that directed and produced it. But going back to the point that I was initially wanting to make, you can't make this film today. A lot of people who say that don't know what they're talking about. Honestly, they don't. The purity police have always been there. Back when I was a kid, people ranted about movies that were made, rock music, video games, Dungeons and Dragons. The only difference between then and now is Twitter amplifies their voices. People were boycotting radio stations when I was a kid. They were burning books, burning records, trying to shut down anything they could they didn't agree with. It's always been there. Social media just makes it easier for them to mob up and do it. That's all. That's the only difference today. But I mean, a lot of people say that, they really don't know what they're talking about. However, I would say you could not make this movie today. Cheyenne Social Club. But not for the reason that people are too sensitive, but because this film is a product of the era in which it was made. You notice I mentioned earlier that how they danced around the subject. They never spoke about anything explicitly. That's what made the film funny. That's what made the film work. Is the fact that, Jimmy Stewart was like, when he first, when it's like, you don't think this place is, you don't think these girls are, and then Harvey's like, well, I don't know. And then later's like, hey, that question you asked me earlier about what you thought that idol thought you thought this place might be? Well, and then they're interrupted. The sentence is never completed. whenever John goes to meet one of the girls in their room and they pull him in and say, I was DJ's favorite, they shut the door, it fades to black, you don't see anything. That's what makes this film funny and makes it work as a story, is the fact that they danced around the issue. If you tried to remake this film exactly as it is today, it would be, no one would watch it. It's as exactly as it is because it's too corny to dance around the subject that lightly. You don't have to anymore. And also, people would expect a film that included a brothel. They would expect to see nudity, sex scenes. They would expect to hear profanity. They'd expect to hear frank and open discussions about sex. And it wouldn't work. Not like this film works. So I'm saying you couldn't remake, if you did try to remake this film today, to make it work, you would have to change it so drastically that you wouldn't even recognize that it was a remake. And that's what a lot of people who say you couldn't make this film today don't understand, is that it's not about that people are too sensitive. It's about the fact that expectations and what should be shown on a film has changed. What should be allowed to be seen and what needs to be on screen has changed. Films in these days have a lot more limitations. The Hays Code wasn't in effect in 1970, but it had only been repealed a few years before. So people who were making films were still experimenting with what content they could make. They were still expected not to do things. You had, it was controversial to have a married couple share a bed on television in a sitcom in 1970. That was controversial. So, times have changed. There are certain films that aren't going to work because times have changed. Could you remake this film today? Again, to make it work, you'd have to completely change it to the point where it wasn't recognizable as a remake of this film to make it, appreciable for today's audiences. That's I guess my piece on that. I do have other things to say, I guess, about that subject, about you can't make this film today. But I will make that in another video. I'll make a follow-up to this, not with this film. I'll use another film to discuss the not being able to make this film today subject, but I will make another one. Maybe I'll make it soon, while the thought is still fresh in my head. But until then, if you like this video, please seek therapy. I have other videos. If you're in that desperate need of therapy, you might enjoy the other ones. Thank you for watching, and until next time, good hunting.